Be on good behavior then. All right, so I'm going to get this started and thank you all for joining us this evening for the first meeting of our Sustainability Task Force for the City of Manassas. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Matt Arcieri. I'm the Director of Planning and Community Development for the city, and on behalf of my staff and the Planning Commission and Chair Elaine Troutwine, who's with us this evening, we wanted to thank all of you for joining us for this meeting to kick off a bit of a process. When we get into these long-range planning processes, we really find that it works well in subject matter experts from our various boards and commissions to help us guide the development of a new plan or a new policy. So we'll get into some of what that planning and policy is and where it stems from as we get into the evening. But up front, I'm not going to belabor the talk too long, but I really want to say just we thank you. We know you all are very busy, so we thank you for your time. The couple of the big players here, just to introduce on my staff, Dorothy Baker is the project manager. So if you have questions on logistics, keep working with Dorothy on that. And then of course we have our team from GMU. You know, the City of Manassas is a small staff, so we could not do this without GMU coming to us a few years ago and saying, do you want some help with one of your goals in your comprehensive plan? And then I'm going to turn it over in a moment to Metropolitan Washington Council of Government staff from their environmental services. We're so fortunate to have regional experts who we can bring in and set the stage before we really get into the details of this project. And I'll turn it over to Maya and Jeff in one moment, but I think just if we don't mind going around the room, I think I can see everyone go around the room. So I've introduced our staff, but I'm gonna just call out a few names. If you just want to unmute yourself and say who you are and what group you're with, I think that just to set the stage, and we'll come back into some more formal introductions when we turn it over to GMU. So I see Barbara up in the corner. Hi, Barbara.
Hi, how's everybody doing? Hope you're having a good day. I actually sit on the board of the Point of Woods East Lakeside board homeowner community.
Thanks. And I see Elaine Troutwine, our Planning Commission chair. Hi, Elaine. Richard, Sarah, I always butcher your name, sir. How are you? You have a little sound trouble there. I'm going to keep going, Richard. Sorry about that. I see you waving, though. It froze. Carmela, how are you?
Fine. Good evening. I'm Carmela Patrick. I'm the chair of the Manassas Business Council, and I work for Weber Rector Commercial Real Estate in the city, and I also have a land use planning background.
And then Ms. Spall, hello.
I am Jill Spall from Manassas City School Board.
And then we got Mel. Hi, Mel.
Hey y'all, I'm from Beautification Committee.
And last but not least, I think from this group, Samantha, hello.
Hi, my name's Sam, and I'm also with Beautification.
One of you is also Keep Manassas Beautiful, I believe. So
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
me.
So that's we have a bunch of other boards and commissions, utilities, airport joining us as we get into this. So I'm going to pause right there, and I think we're going to go right into so what is sustainability, and turn it over to our friends at COG to start this process, and then we get into the real fun technical stuff. Maya, Jeff, hello.
Good evening, everyone. Hopefully my camera's working. You can see me, hear me. I'll let Maya pull up the slides here. All right, so good evening, everyone. Jeff King with the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. I'm the director of the Climate, Energy, and Air program. Joined today by Maya Davis, who's our lead climate staff. And really pleased to be able to present to you tonight. And as Matt mentioned, we are available to support the city as one of our COG members, and really pleased to see that this is coming together. And you know, to the extent that the group finds it needs information, you can send those requests through Matt, and we'll be happy to see what we can do to help. So next slide, Maya. Just to kick it off, we do have a slide here that talks about. Let's see if I can get my computer to work. shows some information on the definition of sustainability. And I think it probably has many different permutations. I think most folks probably have a decent sense of what that means, but we think of it in terms of meeting environmental, social, economic needs of our generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. So a sustainable community would be committed to moving its operations and community towards a more sustainable future that considers the planet, the people, and prosperity. So next slide. And just before we get into our work on climate and energy, just so folks know, if you're not familiar with COG, the Council of Governments, we've been around for a bit more than 50 years. And there are COGs all across the country, actually. Every major metropolitan area has some sort of COG or metropolitan planning organization. And in fact, we were brought about in large part due to the federal highway system way back when the bill was passed by Congress, setting up, the funding for federal highways. They required that if you're a metropolitan area receiving federal dollars, you have to have a multi-governmental board council to just make the decisions about which roads to build, which transit systems to invest in, and the like. And so COGS are really a convening and policy-making, decision-making authority, as it were, to help coordinate, these types of issues across a metropolitan region. And so our board is comprised of mayors and county board supervisors, county council, city council folks, and we convene pretty much on any topic you can think of related to governance, except we don't really do public schools in the same way that local government kind of bifurcates the government and the schools. We also don't really have schools as our membership. But police chiefs, fire chiefs, homeland security, animal control, housing, and in our case, with Maya and I and our team, we have an energy committee that also deals with the built environment and sustainable transportation. We have a climate, energy, environment policy committee setting regional policy, and our kind of vision is been memorialized in a concept called Region Forward. And our vision is to ensure a more prosperous, accessible, livable, sustainable, and equitable future for all of our residents in the region. We are 24 member governments in Maryland, DC, and Virginia. And you can see the map there, the Virginia side, north to Loudoun, south down to Prince William. So we don't have Fauquier, Stafford, although they do participate in some ways in some of our planning efforts, particularly around transportation. On the Maryland side, all the way north up to Frederick County and south down to Charles County. So we do not have Howard County or Calvert County. Next slide. And so I mentioned, Maya and I work on the climate program at COG, and the COG board really started looking at this issue pretty closely right around 2006 timeframe, where there was a call for a kind of an informal roundtable to talk about what the region should do about climate change. And that led to a COG board resolution establishing a climate change steering committee, which spent about a year, and I was the lead staff on that at the time, trying to come up with a policy for the region on what the region should do about climate change. So in 2008, the COG board adopted the COG Climate Report. And in that report, it established greenhouse gas emission reduction goals. And at the time, the goals were set for 2012, which was to spur near-term action. Then it was 2020, which was 20% reduction in emissions by 2020, and then a 2050 goal of 80% emission reduction by 2050, which at the time was believed to be kind of in compliance with the Kyoto Protocol. I think since then we've seen the urgency of taking action on climate increase, and a lot more calls for achieving net zero and doing it as fast as we can. As we approach 2020, interestingly, we realized that once we hit that 2020 goal, we had this big period of time, till 2050, and no more interim goals. So there was a call for thinking about what should we do for a new interim goal. So all through the pandemic, it was quite an enterprise, and Maya did a lot of heavy lifting, and over the course of multiple stakeholder sessions and lots of policy and technical meetings, adopted a new 2030 goal of a 50% reduction in emissions off of our 2005 baseline by 2030. So a very aggressive goal. It's in line with some of our membership's aggressive, local targets. So that's good that we are finding that many of our members are kind of, have the same set of goals and plans, but it's a very aggressive goal. We do think that there are a lot of tools in our toolbox to achieve it, but it's going to really take a concerted multi-sector effort involving everybody to really get where we need to go. But we're already seeing signs that ship is turning, and particularly in terms of what we see happening, for instance, in the light duty vehicle fleets and the electric grid and the economics of renewables and building technologies and efficiency it seems to be kind of aligning towards having a good set of solutions that will help us get there. Next slide. So in addition to the climate mitigation goals, and often in this realm of climate, people talk about climate mitigation, which is let's reduce emissions and try to stop climate change from happening. Massive global undertaking to deal with that, but there's also the realization and the belief that the impacts of rising levels of CO2 in the atmosphere and methane in the atmosphere and other gases in the atmosphere is already having an impact. Interestingly, I started my career as a contractor to the US EPA back in 1990, and my first project out of college was supporting the EPA thinking about the benefits of avoiding climate change. Like, what is it worth to not let this happen to the planet? And at the time, I was a complete denier. I was much more interested in pesticides and toxic chemicals and Superfund and all that. And it's just amazing that in my career, the last 10 years, you can just see the impacts that are happening globally. This year alone, just seeing the massive droughts followed by massive flooding events that occurred, not just in one location, but like each continent got hit. It just really, really incredible to see what's going on. So to that end, the realization that we also probably need to start thinking about climate adaptation and resilience. So the climate resilience goal is one that's a little probably behind the work we've done on mitigation, in part because it takes it's pretty hard task to kind of assess, well, what is it that we're going to need to adapt to, and what extent do we need to adapt, and what do we need to adapt, and how, where do we need to make those investments, and so it's everything from drought to flooding to ice storms to sea level rise, and so it's a major undertaking to kind of get that piece of the puzzle solved. So in the plan, or in the goals that were adopted, is to have a climate ready region by 2030. So in that sense, try to get all of our COG local member governments really on the same page and understanding the current and future risks, and to be beginning that process of actively integrating those kind of planning considerations across the government plans, the government operations and communications. So kind of get the ball, moving, get things started, all in the effort of trying to be fully climate resilient, make the investments in the water system, make the investments in the stream and riverine areas, the reservoirs, et cetera, to be where we think we need to be by 2050 or so, and be kind of a climate resilient region. So with that, that kind of covers the background on our climate work. It gives you the mitigation goals, the emission reduction goals, and the climate resilience. So with that, I will turn it over. Wait, one more slide before we move to Maya. In the plan, you can read, we've established a set of climate guiding principles for collaboration. So if you care to dive into those a bit, I'm not going to go through all these on the slide, but we felt it important to also include some guiding principles. So with that, I'll turn it over to Maya, who will walk you through the rest of the presentation. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Jeff. So we do regional climate plans. We had a 2020 plan. Now we have a plan for the region to meet that 2030 goal that Jeff put out. And this slide goes over, kind of how we work together, how we collaborate across jurisdictions, how we collaborate, across various stakeholders. There we go. But in addition to the planning, we also provide our local government members support in developing plans and implementing plans. And so over the years since Jeff started the program, we've supported jurisdictions in developing their local government plans for government operations and community-wide, for mitigation and resilience, sustainability plans, as well as electric vehicle plans. We also work together through our committees we have a policy committee with elected officials. Your representative is Tom Osina, who participates in our group there, and we work on policy guidance and helping to answer questions and come together in agreement on, policies that relate to climate change and energy. We provide a lot of data and technical support to our members, such as doing the greenhouse gas inventories, tracking trends on energy consumption across jurisdictions in the region, supporting our local governments with data and tools related to help them make decisions about equitably moving towards their climate goals. We have a lot of resilience-related projects, working locally in local communities, or the Military Installation Resilience Review is working with communities around military bases in the region to establish on and off-base resilience initiatives together. We work with some of our homeland security folks on energy preparedness for large energy outages based on climate events, local climate energy feasibility assessments. The pictures on this slide are Jeff leads an effort to do diesel retrofits across the region. So many of the trains at Union Station in DC have been retrofitted to clean diesel. That's the top picture on the right. The bottom picture is one of the tour boats on the Potomac that Jeff has led in getting those to cleaner repowers, construction equipment across the region, and the like. We also do a lot of technical trainings and capacity building and education and outreach. So we have a DMV Climate Partners website, as well as a weekly e-news to share information on local climate news and energy news of interest to our members, events that they can participate in to learn more, resources for residents, and the like. So this is just kind of a sample of some of the implementation project and support that we do with our members. One of the things we've had in the past, 4 or 5 years, maybe in particular, is these climate planning contracts. So, we have a team of 5-6 folks here, and we can do a lot of this work and have done a lot of this work in collaboration with experts in the region and around the country, as well as global experts to support our members. But we are just a team of 5-6 people at a time. So we have contracts in place where you can partner with us or ride these contracts and get access to additional support. And so a lot of our local government members have been leveraging these contracts for their larger climate planning projects. I think it's fantastic that you guys have Joel and Paul and the team support here and to be able to develop your plans. A lot of folks don't have that. And so this map is a picture of a lot of the jurisdictions that are working with us and leveraging these contracts to develop their big climate, energy, sustainability, electric vehicle plans. But we have these new contracts that we're signing now because of our members are much more interested in, okay, well, now we got our plans in place, our new plans in place, but we need support on implementing our plans. And so, and Jeff mentioned this is all very multi-sectoral. So the new contracts support a broad range of implementation support. So it's not just energy efficiency and renewable energy projects or electric vehicle projects, but also solid waste and recycling, regenerative ag and soil, land use assessments for large scale solar, urban heat island and tree canopy support, marketing and engineering assessments, technical support on procurement and deal structures and finance options, as well as community public engagement and engaging underserved communities. So we have 6 contractors that are coming under contract with this really broad range of specialties to meet all the needs that our members have asked us to help them support on. So real quickly, I just want to walk through the regional and greenhouse gas inventory results to give you a sense of where we stand region-wide and as well as across your community. And so what this graph shows is between 2005 and 2018, greenhouse gas emissions reduced across the Metro DC region by about 13%. And the vast majority of these emissions in the region, as well as locally to your community, comes from buildings and transportation. And so the highest 3 sectors here are on-road emissions, which is the yellow bar, which accounts for like 31% of total emissions. Commercial energy, which also accounts for about 31% of emissions. And then residential energy, which accounts for 21% of our emissions. So something our members asked for was like, it's great, all these community inventories are being done for us, and that's really important, but if we're going to do something about this, we need to understand why these emissions are changing. And so we partnered with ICLEI, who I understand is also supporting this project, and experts, U.S. Department of Energy, and some experts in other communities and regions across the country to try to figure out how do we do this. And we worked on developing a model that shows what is driving emissions between the greenhouse gas inventory years. And so what this shows you, essentially, the red bars are showing major increases and the blue bars on the right are showing major decreases. And so, population growth and growth in commercial are major drivers of what is increasing emissions, but that's really being offset by the bar of electric fuel mix and the next bar over. It's really about a cleaner electric grid and cleaner cars. And then thirdly, reduce vehicle miles traveled per person. So we've started looking at 2020 greenhouse gas emissions, and this is just a draft chart right here. To really understand, did we meet that 20% goal that was on the earlier slide, the 20% by 2020 goal, and trying to understand what impacts the pandemic has had on whether we've met those goals or not. And so still, looking at 2018 to 2020 differences, the grid is still getting cleaner. Right? We know that it's not on this chart, but we know cars are still getting cleaner. But the pandemic has had an impact on more people being off the road. So that's the decreased VMT line right there. So we know that there have been impacts from the pandemic. But we also know that compared to 2018, 2020 had a warmer winter. So that also leads to reduced commercial building energy use, particularly from natural gas in the winter time. So just going over Manassas results really quickly here. So from 2005 to 2018, emissions reduced about 9 to 10% in the city of Manassas. And what our draft results are showing, we'll have final results later this year, but what the draft results are showing for 2020 thus far is that between 2005 and 2020, emissions reduced 22%. So, to go from 13% to 22%, within a couple of years is certainly a significant drop. And some of that is because the grid has gotten a lot cleaner in Virginia. But it's, there and the warmer winter, but certainly also the pandemic. And when we look at the drivers of change, this waterfall chart for the city itself, community-wide, we can see that things that are driving up emissions are growth in commercial floor area, as well as growth in population. But also with that growth in the floor area, it's also becoming more energy efficient. So when you see this decreased therms per square foot or decreased kilowatt hours per square foot, that's basically saying like the energy intensity or energy use per square foot in these buildings is improving along with that and help driving the emissions down, as well, again, as the grid getting cleaner. So I'll stop there. Hopefully that didn't get too technical in the weeds for you all, but happy to answer any questions that you all might have tonight or follow-up questions that you might have. I'm happy to answer questions now or after Joel, however you see fit, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Maya. I'll defer to Matt, how he wants to proceed.
So we were really happy to have COG join us, and we moved him up to the front of the presentation, even though we haven't gotten to some of our ground rules because we didn't want to keep them here any longer since they're volunteering their time, and we really appreciate that. I don't know if, real quick, if folks don't, I think we're pretty early, so unless anyone, feel free, we're pretty small, so feel free to unmute if you have a question, but I think we should really get into the larger goals of the project, Joel, and then we can always talk to Jeff and Maya. If we have a question, we can shoot it over to you, but we really appreciate setting the stage for this project or this piece of the project.
Maya, I actually have a question, if it's okay. I wanted to ask, you talked about the implementation support the COG can offer, and I just wanted to ask, how can counties and communities access some of that support that you're willing to provide?
Yeah, sure. So there's sometimes, particularly in past years and the early years of the program, where members come to us and they have questions. And there's different levels and there's different ways that we address things. So for instance, we had an elected official in Falls Church the other month say, I'm really trying to figure out if I should be leveraging our local bonding authority to do, to do large renewable energy projects in my community, but I don't really know a lot about it. And I don't know if anybody else has done that around here. So, we've pulled together a lot of research for them, understanding what is and isn't happening in the region and around the country, and who has the knowledge and technical support to help further that question. And so, that's a simple thing, right? And then we have cases where like all of our local governments come to us at the same time, and they're like, hey, like, how are we going to deploy EVs? How are we going to take advantage of this Inflation Reduction Act money to deploy EVs? Well, the COG board just adopted EV deployment working group and that was last week, and we're launching that with all the local jurisdictions and have consultant support to do that. So sometimes it's something that takes a week or 2 months, and sometimes, you know, it's a large ongoing project. Sometimes in the past, we've been able to like leverage our federal contacts to come in and provide technical support on their dollar to support particular questions. Like when Falls Church was like, hey, we want to do our high school as net zero. We have no idea where to start. You guys got anything in mind? And so we were able to pull some national US Department of Energy lab experts in, and they provided technical support and did geothermal and solar analytics on this property, and they were able to design and build the school in a way that's net zero ready. And then with these contracts that we were talking about, that's something where you know, the local jurisdiction has some money and funding to put towards a particular project. But when you partner with us, we also provide in-kind dollar support to support that effort. So you do get some technical support for us for free to kind of help, you know, get your project further along, particularly with our smaller jurisdictions that, you know, might not have a lot of staff on hand to manage these projects.
Thank you.
I'll just say real quick, so we to keep things moving. There's a lot of technical stuff going on right now, lots of implementation. So one way that this group can help us is, as you see things out there, share them with the staff, and we will continue to figure out, you know, do we want to build it into the plan that we're developing? Is it something, you know, do we have those resources available? We have a lot of, and Joel, I mean, Paul, you'll get to this in a moment. We got a lot of city support staff who's not here who can also help out in addition to COG. So for the group, you know, yeah, be listening to some of these ideas, you know, can we leverage some of COG's resources? Can we leverage other programs that are out there? And we'll start building that into your action plan as we move forward. And with that, Paul.
Yeah, one last question from my end, Jeff. You've obviously observed a lot of counties within the metropolitan Washington area embark upon the process we're about to embark upon. And I just wanted to ask you, thinking back to your experiences working with or knowing about these other jurisdictions, what might be some lessons learned that we could begin to absorb at the very beginning so we're not repeating any mistakes that others have made?
So, I mean, I think one thing is just, and it's part of reason of us presenting tonight, is to, you know, make sure that you guys know that you're not alone, right? And in doing this, and your neighboring jurisdictions have been working on this and working with COG on this for good times, you know, for a long time. So, you know, we do the inventories. We do track progress. We have, you know, so when you're thinking about, you know, tracking progress on your plan, you can look at the link on the climate mitigation goals slide page. We track a lot of this data in there locally as well as regionally, like green buildings, EV stations, that sort of thing. So we help track data, and you know, we have this regional plan that you know, encompasses what all your neighboring jurisdictions are doing. And so, you know, you don't have to make this up from scratch, right? It's a good template to like pick and choose what works for you, especially at a small jurisdiction. We have work with a lot of small jurisdictions that say, we can't do all of that. You know, we have some Arlingtons and some Fairfax counties that say we're going to do all of these things. But, you know, I think it's sort of, you know, when you look at this and say, where can we make an impact? What makes sense for our community? Where can we get the biggest bang for our buck? Like, you know, you don't get overwhelmed. You don't have to do the whole thing, but, you know, pick and choose what's gonna work from you. But, you know, certainly leverage the data and information and the plans and actions that are already right around you. And you're already leveraging Paul and Joel and Ickley, and we're here too, and your neighboring jurisdictions as well. So
yeah, and I'd just add, from a process standpoint, I think I can already tell you've done one thing I'd recommend, which is keep the group small on the smaller side. I think some of the groups I've seen just have way too many participants and it becomes extremely unwieldy. So be cautious on that. Expect it to be challenging if you get to a point where you decide you want to do the community engagement piece. That is not all that easy to do, and I suspect you'll find probably your most willing participant in that type of engagement is possibly the public schools. And so look to that maybe as one out, and give it a try, and you'll know your local community, but just know that is not easy. I definitely recommend what Maya said is, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. A lot of this has been, a lot of our regional policy measures and actions are totally applicable and shareable, but we also have compilations of what folks are putting in the local plan. So it's almost a menu. You can pick and choose what you think might work. I think be ready for and look for, and hopefully you'll have the staff leadership to help you navigate and guide yourself through it. But at some point, you may get wrapped around an issue that makes it difficult to kind of hammer your way through the larger process. And we've seen that, and it tends to what I've seen, it tends to get kind of heated, and particularly around the issue of land use. So be ready for some interesting conversations related. And I know that's a current issue where you guys are at with the data center issue, but so be aware of that. And then of course, the sector specific issues. So I know, issues up in Frederick County are different than, down in Charles County, for instance. And I know Northern Virginia has one particular challenge, which is the whole data center issue. And interestingly, it's a sector that we've been reaching out to for years now, trying to understand better their willingness to share data and information that we need. It's been challenging from an industry sector standpoint, where there's so much proprietary concern that they just don't feel they can share it. But and interesting, I'll give a shout out to Manassas, the one industry player that is bent over backwards to be helpful with us is Micron. So they've been very transparent and willing to talk to us and share. So that was good. And having said that, that particular sector, while they might not share, are a huge driver of the positive agenda for solutions. I don't know the exact percent, but something like 40% or higher, like 50% of all of Dominion's solar market growth is due like solely to the data center sector. So they may be viewed as kind of, very large energy consumers, but as you know, many of these companies are fully committed to 100% renewables, and they are putting up big dollars to do big investments in renewables, which is part of what's really cleaning the grid. And getting to that clean grid is going to be a huge piece of the puzzle in getting to, carbon neutrality or net zero, or certainly to lower emissions. So there's just a couple of thoughts from, some of our engagements with particularly, Prince George's County, Frederick County, Fairfax. Each has a little bit different flavor, but, keep it small, be nimble, be ready for some of the landmines that you're going to hit. Trust your staff and count on them, and good luck.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Maya. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to share my screen and continue with the presentation on our part. So we didn't have an opportunity to introduce ourselves, but my name is Paul Bubash. I'm a professor at George Mason University. I teach courses in environmental law and energy law. I teach a course on the history of environmental policy. I spent most of my career in the federal government, spent 13 years at EPA and 8 at the Department of Energy, and then decided I wanted to do some teaching. So part of what we're doing besides teaching classes is this project we have called the Local Climate Action Planning Initiative. It's our university model approach to helping jurisdictions, communities, counties, cities in developing climate action plans, mitigation, and adaptation. And I'll let my colleague Joel Hicks introduce himself as well.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Paul. I'm Joel Hicks. I live in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, where I'm on city council here, and I chair our climate action committee. I took on this role shortly after I got my doctorate at George Mason and began teaching there. I teach energy policy and policy analysis. And so that offered me an opportunity to kind of combine some of my academic work in energy policy to dealing with issues that you all are wrestling with right now. And I can tell you, I have my hands as deep into it as you all will soon be having it. So I really resonate with all the challenges and hope to bring some of my experience to bear on this project. But yeah, I look forward to sharing some of the work we've done to complement what NWCOG's done. And I think we can give you a little bit more insights on how to prioritize things based on some of the work we did in the last 9 months or so. But I'll turn it back over. Thanks, Paul.
Sure. Okay, so the way we're going to use the rest of our time is I'm going to go over the task force specifics. So essentially a framework on how we should be working together. Then I'm going to turn it over to Joel to give us a presentation on what he found specific in terms of the greenhouse gas emissions associated with Manassas city government. Now, as I talk, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. It's really important for you to just kind of jump in. If we were, face to face, it might be easier. I know that sometimes when we're on Zoom calls, we tend to kind of sit back, but I really do want this to be an exchange of information between everyone on this committee. I'll go over our roles in a moment, but essentially, Joel and myself, we're facilitators. We're here to help you. We have a deep bench back at the university, so if you have questions that require an engineering professor to step in or a policy professor, we can definitely go back. We'll heed MWCOG's advice as well, that they have a lot of expertise, and we'll definitely look at other jurisdictions as well. These are the task force members. Some of you are on the call, some are not. Hopefully we'll get to know you all before this process ends. We also have city support staff here. Matt or Dorothy, I don't know if you want to say anything about city support staff and their role.
With the city support staff will stay, they'll be in the background. So you'll be interfacing from the staff side primarily with Dorothy and I. But you can see we have all of our departments participating. We are quite fortunate to have our school system involved. And when Joel gets to his presentation, you'll see how much data we've gotten from all of these folks already. But they're all here to help you. And it's a good team. So we're very fortunate to have such expertise, quite honestly, in a city of our size.
Great, excellent, thanks. So let's begin with the framework. So we begin with the 2040 comprehensive planning process, and it represents the city's goals. That's where we begin. It represents strategies and it provides a roadmap to achieve these goals by 2040. And it's intended to guide us along the process of achieving our goals. So this is a document we want to keep over here. We want to refer to it as our guidepost as we go along through these meetings. It addresses many issues, land use, housing, etc. We're here to talk about environmental sustainability and health, but it's a comprehensive plan. It's actually required by law, requires localities to adopt this plan and then review it every 5 years. And it's implemented largely through policies and strategies, zoning, building codes, and finally, government appropriations. One of the things that we like to offer is an ability for the university and our students to help implement some of the strategies and policies that we all come up with here. It's an opportunity for our students to get real hands-on experience working with local governments. And it's also an opportunity for everyone on this call to see their projects and their ideas actually come to fruition. So students can work on a variety of things such as trying to solicit for grants or helping departments actually implement policies. So if we go down into the subsector of environmental sustainability and health, the goal here is that Manassas will try to achieve a sustainable and resilient city. Values the environment, encourages access to nature, etc. And recognizing the need to make the community more resilient so its residents enjoy a better quality of life. And when we kind of narrow down to a subsector goal, it's to adopt a broad-based sustainability ethic that incorporates best practices. And within that, develop a holistic sustainability plan that inventories natural resources and provides a blueprint for creating a thriving and sustainable community. So the task force here is going to focus in on a subset of that. It's going to focus in on air quality and emissions. And there is a goal for that. And that goal is to create a more safe and secure future by encouraging the reduction of fossil fuel consumption and emissions. The code for this is mitigation. These are reducing emissions. There are a lot of other goals in the plan, and we want to address those eventually. It's logical to begin with this type of approach to see where we can reduce emissions. So the focus is on the built environment, so new, green, and sustainable buildings, building energy benchmarking, smart growth policies. Also going to look at renewables, encouraging the use of wind and solar and geothermal where applicable. Most importantly, we probably want to be focusing in on transportation and mobility. And of course, solid waste, encouraging the citywide waste prevention, recycling, and composting. And policies and regional coordination as well. So our focus is on phase 1 air quality and emissions. Again, we're going to try to hit transportation, energy use and production, and solid waste. So as we get into our discussions next time we meet, we really kind of want to narrow the parameters into these 3 major bins. Future phases that we want to address would include the following here. And then after that, we want to look at sustainability initiatives as well. So how can we adapt our communities to better withstand some of the effects of climate change? So we're going to do a flow down. We're going to adopt the goals that the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments has already established. And that goal is a mitigation goal. Mitigation, again, is emission reductions of 50% greenhouse gas emission reductions from the baseline of 2005 by 2030. There's a climate resilience goal of becoming a climate-ready region. This requires that local governments access current and future climate risks and integrate climate planning across government plans and operations. And hopefully we'll be able to begin to do some of that in 2023. And there's also the need to incorporate equity principles and expand education on climate change for its members' actions. And that'll be a public process that we'll talk about in a moment. Our desired outcomes for the task force: we want to complete a current inventory of greenhouse gas emissions. And we've done that both for the community, MW-COG has done that, and we've done it for the local government. George Mason University did that, and Joel will speak to that in a moment. We also want to develop the sustainability plan, which is our phase 1 that incorporates specific sector level goals, actions, policies, and strategies. So that's kind of our role. We want to look at what kind of actions we can develop, policies, and strategies. We want to integrate and include public comments in the final plan. And I'll discuss that schedule in a moment. And we want to educate and increase public awareness of the sustainability plan. And then finally, we want to implement that sustainability plan and then track and monitor to see how well it's being implemented. So our guiding principles, I'm just going to do a little subset of these that derive from MW-COG. Integrity is going to be really important. So the plan should reflect science-based, practical, and achievable options. So when we discuss some of these ideas, we want to kind of look back to these principles and ask ourselves these kind of questions. Is it practical? Is it achievable? If not, what do we do with it? Maybe we put it out in a parking lot and kind of discuss it at a future time. We want to be as collaborative as possible. We want to incorporate multidisciplinary expertise and promote cross-departmental coordination. We want as much transparency as possible. So this meeting is being recorded. We want to be able to share that with the public within Manassas City. And in understanding, we want the plan to strive to ensure that people truly understand what it is that this plan is about. Roles and responsibilities. So for you, the task force members, we're looking for you to provide recommendations for the sustainability plan for the community and its leaders. We want you to work collaboratively to represent the interests of the city as a whole, balancing a variety of stakeholder points of view. We want you to weigh constraints, costs, and opportunities in your decision-making. And we hope that you will be able to attend all the meetings and contribute to the plan development. On our part, we're assisting the task force in arriving at a final plan, and we want to provide background information and expertise and research for the task force on any issues that they want to go deeper on. And we're going to organize and implement the meeting. Now, we also have a third-party partner called ICLEI, stands for the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives. And we've contracted out with ICLEI to help us out with modeling. So they're assisting in developing the planning and mitigation strategies and customizing reduction strategies as well. So we meet with them with core Manassas City staff to get training and also to kind of understand modeling and other issues. And they're assisting us in stakeholder engagement strategy, implementation, monitoring plan, and eventually finalizing the plan. And they are experts. They've been doing this for decades, and they've been working with dozens and dozens of cities throughout the United States, as well as internationally. So we're going to either hold the meetings in person or virtually based on your own preferences. The city will identify and notify you of dates, times, and locations of meetings. We're going to make meeting minutes and the recording available to the public. Our second meeting is scheduled for October 12th. And we'll either do that at the airport or we'll have it done virtually. The next meeting after that will be November 30th, and then a December 14th one. Locations to be determined. We may just continue to do these virtually, or if your preference is to meet in person, we can do that as well. This meeting, we're just going to go over goals and process, review the baseline. The next meeting, we're going to start to draft the climate mitigation action and strategy options. So that's going to be putting a lot of meat to the bone of what you want to do. Now, these can be just your ideas. We can fine tune them between October 12th and November 30th. We can have a little back and forth if that's something that people desire. On November 30th, we're going to review an impact analysis of these actions that ICLEI has done for us. So essentially, how well will we achieve our goals based on the inputs that you're giving us in October 12th? And then the final meeting, or we could have a fifth meeting. The fourth meeting on December 14th will be to prioritize the final actions and strategies and come to some type of agreement as to what the final phase 1 report should look like. And then Joel and I and Matt and Dorothy and others will go back and begin to draft a copy to be delivered to everyone on the task force. And we hope to conclude everything really by January of 23. So the process, review best practices from neighboring jurisdictions. We also want to incorporate your ideas about goals, strategies, and policies. Now, we'll help you with best practices from neighboring jurisdictions. MWCOG has a lot of information. A lot of jurisdictions have done these. Think of Fairfax County, Arlington. We can go over to Maryland, look at Montgomery County. We can look at these different ideas. We'll share this information with you. So you're not beginning from a blank slate. You kind of look at what others have done. We want to evaluate the options. We want to decide on best options, and we want to begin to implement those options. Dorothy, I'll hand this over to you.
I think Dorothy's going to want me to take this one. So
Okay.
this is just a really quick idea. Actually, Jill reminded me we didn't capture this one. The schools are already in the process of electrifying the school bus fleet. So we have lots of projects that are already ongoing, and this just gives you a taste of stuff that we're already doing. And then these are the kind of things we're really going to be building on and talking about. Are these things when we're talking about the city greenhouse gas emissions, are these things we want to expand? So I'm not going to read through these, but this just gives you a taste of everything that we're already working on and how we might move forward. Yeah, and then just really quickly, Paul, you talked about this already. Public engagement's always any part of this project. Obviously, we really rely heavily on the boards and commissions because y'all are plugged into your subject matter experts in the communities that you're working with as part of those boards and commissions. But we will be going out as we develop the plan and share it. And maybe not all of these ideas. This is just a flavor of what we do. Anytime we start to pull a plan together to get some community input, and then we will feed that community input back to this group to help kind of refine the final product. And you'll actually see in the city newsletter that everyone gets the utility bills. The ManassasVA.gov/sustainability website is going up as we speak. So that'll be the clearinghouse for all this information. And then as we get into the public outreach, where folks can submit us comments, and then we'll as staff, we'll be out collecting comments. And actually, I'm going to ask this task force to help us gather comments as one big piece. In addition to sharing your ideas, is getting out into the community and getting folks to participate in the process as we get into the public engagement.
Great, thanks. So I just kind of want to pause a moment. We've dropped a lot on you, and you've been very patient and very nice to kind of let us talk. But I do want to give an opportunity, just kind of a sounding board, to hear from any of you as to any thoughts or questions or comments on what we have covered so far before we move on to Joel's presentation. Are you all okay with the process? Do you understand? Do you have any questions about your role or kind of what we're trying to achieve here?
I'm comfortable with moving on.
Okay, all right. Anyone else have any questions or anything? All right. Go ahead and we will continue. These are some resources that we could all look to if we want more greater information. And I'll go ahead and I'll turn it over to Joel.
Thanks, Paul. Good to thank you all for joining tonight. I know we spent a few minutes looking at bar charts and some numbers. We're going to do a little bit more of that. I hope to put it in to some context for you as to why we did a little bit additional inventory that hopefully will help with some, particularly with your public sector operations. But I have a few slides I'd like to share. Next slide. I think most of you know the process. You know, you can keep rolling through this with the greenhouse gas inventory that allows we have targets established by the NWCOG that we're going to use to help shape the development. It says there climate action plan. Every municipality kind of gives it a different name. Obviously for you all, you have it as part of your comprehensive plan. So that's the objective, the connection between the inventory and the target itself. Next slide. So both MWCOG and George Mason use the same greenhouse gas inventory tool. It's based on a global, the leading global protocol, which has been sort of tailored for municipalities. And there are two flavors that this community inventory comes in. You can do a community inventory, which you heard from MWCOG, which really covers the majority of both public and private sector emissions. And then there's a local government ops, which is really focused on public sector emissions, which is what we conducted along with one of your experts, Chloe Delhomme, and a couple of students from George Mason. And in many ways, you can consider it a subset of the numbers that go into the community inventory, but there are a couple important caveats where some of the emissions in the local government operations inventory actually are in addition to some of the emissions you saw before. And I'll kind of highlight those as we go forward. Next slide. So here's sort of the roll up for the most recent year. You can kind of get a sense, obviously the orange bar pops out, and I'll just talk a little bit about what's kind of dominating that. It's a bit of a distraction from some of the other numbers, but we'll kind of put it in perspective. So overall, if you count all the emissions, both public and private sector, the public sector operations accounted for just over 6% of all emissions. And then a lot of that was due to what we call scope 3 emissions, due to your operations at the regional airport supplying aviation fleet fuels for independent operators. Those are classified within the boundaries of inventories, and it's a pretty for a regional airport. There's a lot of activity, so it really was sort of the dominant feature in the greenhouse gas inventory. The other additional contribution here that is not in the community inventory is actually captured in the water and wastewater. Since you all provide a little bit of water to adjacent customers, we account for all of the public owned and operated water treatment as opposed to wastewater treatment. You all have your own water treatment, so that some of the emissions you see at that very bottom row are actually not captured in the community one as well. Next slide. So just to give you a sense of what exactly did you measure, we took a look at all the public buildings. I think you can count on two hands, City Hall, Regional Airport, your town hall, museum, police department, fire department, rescue department. All of your energy was from electricity, natural gas. So we have emission factors that give us really good estimates of what the emission profile would be. We included your public lighting, street lights and traffic lights. So that's what constitutes your yellow part of the pie chart there, the buildings and facilities. The vehicle fleet, I will just say, I've done a few of these. Your record keeper, Russ Helton, is unbelievable. He keeps amazing records and he keeps them for a long time. And I can say without a doubt, the estimates that we made even as far back as 2005, and we'll look at those in a bit, are very accurate when it comes to all of your vehicle fleet operations. So we looked at, we did emission profiles based on, heavy duty, light duty trucks, on-road and off-road. The items you see highlighted there were actually, you had some assets there that we accounted for, and we had a really good inventory of all of that type of equipment. So the confidence factor was really high there. And so that constituted everything you see under vehicle fleet. So again, it's largely dominated by the availability of aviation fuel as a scope 3 emission, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Next. So what else do we account for? So again, in accounting for all the events that are, due to public operations, we had to account for employee commutes, right? So we got a really good response on a survey that we had given to all the employees, and we're able to account for what all the transit emissions, mobile emissions that accounted for that. I will make a note that is what we did there is separate from the MWCOG. They actually do account for estimated air travel, the emissions that are due to air travel out of your big airports like Dulles, BWI. That is not included here. And this is really just daily commute emissions profiles that are in the green. You're a little bit unique in the sense you're a public utility, right? Which you don't emit a lot with your diesel generators, are mostly used for peak power. And so that therefore you don't see a lot of emissions coming from electric power production. And so that really is all the emissions coming from all the greenhouse gases emitting from your diesel generators. And your solid waste, you basically we did an estimation of what percentage the public sector contributes going to the same landfill. Your citizens, your residents send their waste to. The water utility is captured. It's primarily powered. All the processes of doing water treatment are basically run by electric power. So we accounted for that. And then you pool in with other adjacent municipalities for your wastewater. We made an estimate of what the public sector's contribution was to wastewater. We put the water and wastewater together in a single one, and that's given by sort of that purple piece of the pie. I will just say, water treatment, there's a lot of power required at the water treatment plant. So it actually probably contributes almost as, probably a little bit more than how much you're running your diesel generators. But that's actually not that unusual. So, but something to keep in mind. Next slide. I threw this out there, there's not a lot of amplifying information other than to say Scope 3 emissions are considered upstream and downstream emissions and not considered direct emissions. Direct emissions are ones that are directly accountable for processes that are done on site. And we account for that both with like energy you might use for your boilers in your buildings. We account for the same energy you might use for an electric boiler, but since that is actually burned maybe many miles away on the grid, we call those Scope 2 emissions. So if you account for the red and the green, those are really what we call direct emissions. Those are emissions due to energy consumed for your operations alone. Now, the Scope 3 accounts for emissions that you provide, but others outside of your community actually are using the energy, and that's what we call Scope 3 emissions. So you can see if and when you all are looking at strategies and policies for public operations, the Scope 3 emissions are not a bad place to start. Obviously, there's a lot of evolution in air transport technologies that I think will probably find their way into conversations at your facility. But also in terms of the interest in having a more decarbonized grid, that will really help with your emissions from your water treatment facility. Next slide. So like NWCOG did, we compared the emissions from the reference year from 2005 to 2020. We had a slightly higher reduction relative to the community inventory over that time. So it was just a little bit over a 21% reduction, and you can see how they break out across the different public sector fields. I don't know if you remember when Maya said, you know, one of the big drivers of reducing emissions really comes into play for you all. So, I mean, a very, very large part of why your emissions are reducing is pretty simple. It's the electric grid has gotten a lot greener. You can attribute that to state and federal policies, which obviously you all have a say in. So you have, whether you know it or not, you have actually been doing policy on emissions reductions through your advocation and state and federal policies. So I'll just add, you know, you all have two really kind of unique opportunities that you don't see in municipalities of like 40,000 folks or smaller, where you have a lot of options in terms of thinking about aviation services. And because you're a public utilities electric, there's a lot of interesting things happening on the demand side of electricity, where you all have the freedom to actually develop some programs on reducing demand. There are a number of options that may not be affordable to a lot of other communities who don't actually own and operate their own electric utilities. So I hope we get a chance over the next few months to kind of talk about that. Next. And yeah, so that was an overview of what we learned over the last 9 months about your public sector operations. Any questions?
Yes.
Hi, yeah, Richard.
Yeah, I have a question about the, excuse me, pardon me. The air operations, the fuel usage at the airport. I know you said that's a scope 3. I mean, do we control it or not? I mean, that's a really complicated question, okay? I mean, we are basically a gas station.
Yeah, I mean.
So therefore, do we, I mean, it looks to me like you gathered all the information that the city directly uses in their buildings and their vehicles and et cetera, right? As opposed to what the citizens use, like gas for our cars and such. Is that correct?
That's correct. We're gathering only those sources of energy, though, that fall under what we call the operational control of Manassas. So it's kind of funny, Richard, you bring it up. We had actually a bit of a discussion about how to classify those fuels as scope 1 or scope 3. And quite frankly, it comes down to just the language of the protocol says that unless the city owns the assets of the airplanes themselves, providing fuel, and these are the same standards that the corporate protocol, the Exxons and the BPs of the world actually use the same standard. If you're just providing it and you don't own the equipment that's actually burning the fuel, you classify them as scope 3. And
right.
So, yeah,
well,
it's just protocol distinguishing.
Right. Well, you made the comment that that's an area we ought to focus on. And I'm somewhat familiar with where we're headed in relative to technology in that regard, and certainly nothing by December. Okay.
That's probably true.
Let me jump in and flip the conversation on its head a little bit, because I think, and we've had a lot of conversations, I've had some conversations with the airport staff about this. I think I would flip it on its head a little bit. I think we really need to make a decision to focus on the scope 1 and 2 and pull out. The scope 3 emissions are so large, it dominates the issue. And as we have to have more conversations, but I think it's very hard to develop a plan if we're going to focus in on such a large piece of the equation that's out of our control in a lot of ways. I really don't. We can have more conversations at the next meeting, but Richard, I know where you're going on this, because I have a lot of concerns about.
Well, no, I think everybody that looks at it understands it. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
I can't wave a wand and change that. However, technologies are being developed. They're being tested. You know, my personal view is there's nothing imminent within the next year or two that would impact that, you know, because what you're really talking about is getting a different type of fuel for the aircraft and or using electricity. And batteries and airplanes don't go together because of the weight. It's, you know, it doesn't offset their fuel load. The weight of a fuel is less than battery load. So there's all kinds of technical problems. However, there's people working on this stuff. And ultimately, there will be changes down the road. I don't have, you know, a looking glass. I know people that will tell you stuff, but the truth is they don't know what they're talking about either, okay? So, I mean, I think that I understand you put it there. I mean, it's like counting the gas station down the street, you know what I mean, to some degree. I mean, they should be selling less grass eventually because of electric cars. Well, something's going to change in aviation, and it probably will be inch along a while, and then there'll be some dramatic change like there is in most things that'll significantly reduce that. What can I say about it in the next couple of months? I'm not exactly sure. I'm not sure I could say something that makes sense is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Richard. Just to put it in perspective, not to get too overwhelmed by that big orange block, that's actually, that scope 3 from the airport, just it is about 28% of your residential emissions. So I mean, it's part of a larger, you know, challenge that it looks bigger simply because that's where we allocate the, you know, if we did it in the community one, it wouldn't stand out like that. And so I don't think we should look at it as too much of an outlier. And the last thing I'll say is I do try to pay attention as much as I can to different emerging technologies. And for what I do understand is that the short haul types of more green aviation options are more promising than the cross country and international ones. So the prospects of being able to transition at a regional airport are going to happen faster. And there's pretty good consensus with that. It's going to happen faster than places like at Dulles and BWI.
Well, I would say that's true, but when you're talking about short haul, that what they're talking about right now is something that doesn't exist. They're talking about commuters using electric aircraft. That has no impact on the airport at all, zero, because we don't have people commuting to Washington in airplanes today. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a lot. The battery technology on planes is largely focused on like island hopping. Literally, you have no other option than to get in an airplane because you can't build a bridge across. But some of the hydrogen fuel cells technologies going up about 400 to 500 miles are actually looking like they'll become commercialized sooner than the long haul combustion hydrogen sorts. So just something, I mean, you're right. You're absolutely right. Nothing's happening in the next year. Probably nothing's happening in the next 2 years, but things will be happening at the regional level much faster than at the international airports. I really believe that.
Okay. That's it. That was my only point. Thank you.
Any other questions on either the, I can probably answer questions on either inventory, but, or anything that Paul brought up. And I do want to, I know that Maya, Peter got off the line here, but I do really appreciate their help. I was able to use a lot of the information they had already collected, you know, over the years they've been working with you, and some of that was actually very critical to the government operations inventory. So, all right, thanks.
So for our second meeting, one thing we can do is we can begin to identify and explore options available for your consideration. And we'd also want you to come with your own ideas for this following meeting. And then after that second meeting, we'll have our contractors go ahead and analyze the economic, environmental, and social impacts of each of the options. And then we'll create a set of criteria to help you prioritize the actions and strategies. And we'll have you then endorse a draft final list of mitigation actions and strategies. And then finally, we'll meet to discuss the options in light of the analysis and identify a final list of mitigation actions and strategies for the community.
We have lots of ideas, and we have, I think, Cog hinted at it, that there's a whole menu of things that are being done that we'll be able to share with you. So it's not just stabbing in the dark, but yes, definitely give us your ideas. And yeah, we'll have to have I really do want to, I got to come back to it. We're really going to have a conversation about that airport emissions, how that fits into our goals, because it's obviously a huge and unusual piece for a small government. So I need to have some more conversations with GMU about that. All
Well,
right.
that's it for the formal presentation. If anyone has any questions or anything, we'll be happy to try our best to answer them.
And Dorothy and I are available. You know where to find us if you don't have our numbers already. So if you have anything that comes to mind, any other thoughts that bubble up, you know where to find us. Email us or give us a call.
Would you, would the group want to continue with the virtual meetings, or do you want to do a hybrid or face-to-face? Any sense of where you want to go with that?
I prefer face-to-face, but
I think face-to-face would be better too.
obviously Joel has to be online, but I understand some people can be online and some, oh, he's not be in the local meeting. Yeah. I think meeting personally is helpful, but
I'm in Northern Virginia every week. Thanks for thinking of me, Richard. I do teach down in Mason, so I'm happy to be there if face-to-face works better. I agree. I think it's probably a little more effective too.
I drive through your community a lot.
I think we'll find a meeting space. I think that's our next goal.
Well, the airport, we have conference rooms there that are pretty good, so.
Your conference room is the most popular meeting room in the city of Manassas currently, due to some of our other construction projects. So
right.
I think we tried for it tonight, actually. So yeah, Dorothy and I will get that knocked down for the next meeting.
Great, thanks, Matt. Well, if there are no further questions, we'll go ahead and adjourn for the evening. And I want to thank everyone for coming and participating. I look forward to meeting you face-to-face if that's what we do, and continuing the conversation and the dialogue. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, y'all.